This thing popped up on eBay, but there has to be a mistake here. There's no way that this is a 1960-ish Gibson custom, right? Let's give him the benefit of the doubt and actually take a look at it. All right, so that's a BC Rich influenced body shape. And believe it or not, I actually have had one of these on the show before. They're known as the BC Rich Bich, if you want to say it nicely. But this body shape was invented in the year 1978. And a lot of times they'll actually be 10 strings, other times they're just neck through construction, traditional 6 strings, but you can find some interesting wooden combinations. And on top of that, they have a whole bunch of other fancy electronics in them. They are fascinating guitars. That then in 1981 influenced something known as the Warlock model. Very similar body shapes, just ever so slightly different. So going based on our seller's description, that means this shape was predated by whoever made this guitar, and the BC Rich company and designers stole it? Well, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, but it does look like it could potentially be neck through construction because we have one piece of wood right here and then 2 surrounding it, so it could be a 3-piece neck. And it looks like we've got an invader down here, some sort of other double cream. This is really screaming late 70s, early 80s to me so far. But that's a pretty cool wrap tail piece. It also has individual intonation for each. As far as fancy electronics, it just looks like your regular stuff on first glance anyway. But next we need to ask, does this look like Gibson quality work? No. To put it nicely, this looks like some sort of a homemade project. The edges are very hand sanded and rounded, not completely uniform and even. I get a real good chuckle out of this cutaway over here. Like, that just looks like it's barely holding on. One good ding and that whole thing's gonna fly off. And now check out these screws. Those definitely came from the hardware store. They're way too big. If you come down here, you can see what screws normally look like on a pickup ring. But now flipping over to the backside, we can see that wasn't just some sort of a design put on the top. It does appear to be at least a multi-pieced constructed body. But my friends, I would not be featuring this if there wasn't actually some truth and reasoning behind why the person who has this guitar thinks it's what it is. My goodness. It actually is a Gibson. Oh, man. Let's just say I did make an offer to bring this in to review and document it, but it did not fall where I wanted it to be. This is a real Gibson neck that has been slapped onto some sort of a homemade body is my best guess. And it's really frustrating how there's no good full photo shots where you can see everything all at once. I'm not holding out on you guys. Even if you visit the eBay listing, you won't see anything more. But the neck that is on this most definitely came from an early 70s Gibson SG, because that's one of the models that utilized the small block inlays and had a headstock that has a crown on it. In fact, we just very recently reviewed one of these guitars. Now, it didn't necessarily have to be from a top-routed example, but what are SGs known for? Cracking at the heel. There might have been one that got damaged and somebody just had that neck laying around that they could slap onto something else. Or who knows, maybe some of that body is from the original body. I think that would be pushing it. And unfortunately, this is about the best we got as far as a back photo shot. But if we zoom in here, yeah, sure enough, it's the 3 pieces of mahogany, so that checks out. We can see we've got the volute, so we're good again. And it does appear to have a Made in USA stamp with some sort of a serial number, not that we know what it is. A very common mistake when people are dating older Gibsons by themselves is they go to an online guitar dater project, and they just type in the serial number, and then they believe 100% without a doubt what that thing told them was accurate. Unfortunately, it just doesn't work that way in the late 60s and early 70s. You really have to know what you're doing with those and look at a whole bunch of different context clues. So for example, the one that we had just recently documented, 676379. We can come on over to the Guitar Dater project, which, trust me, I'm not knocking these guys. This website is a fantastic resource if you know how to use it right, and you also know how to critically think. It's not necessarily for beginners. If we're in this era, again, 1977 plus, usually you're going to be good unless you're talking about reissues. So we've got our serial. We need to do an extended search. So right here, they say it was built at the Nashville plant in 1996. You got to read closely. It says that's only for the Les Paul Classic guitar. Well, that's not right. What do we got next here? It says this is a match only if the serial number is stamped on the headstock. Now here's the thing. What they mean by that is ink stamped. That's a big difference. Because someone might look at their guitar here and go, yeah, that's stamped. It's stamped into the headstock, into the bare wood. Or, yeah, that looks like some sort of a stamp that they just slapped on there. There's a little outline around it. So with that serial number I used there, you could think it's from the 50s. And going back to the top for a second, some people don't even realize that they need to scroll down on the page to see these other ones. Because if you come down here, we actually do find a semi-watt accurate result. This website calls it an impressed serial and has to have made in USA on the headstock. Okay, that actually lines up pretty decently with our guitar from our sample. Now, I can't comment on this particular one, but I'm betting that's how this seller happens to think he has a 1960s Gibson. But most likely this was a 10-year-old guitar neck that somebody wanted a BC Rich and they hacked it together themselves sometime in the 80s, which in and of itself is really cool. What do I think this guitar is worth? Maybe to the very, very right guy, assuming everything plays nicely and it doesn't need any extensive setup work, I would say $1,500. And I'm sure some people might actually call that a generous estimate. But this neck, assuming that there's no headstock breaks or repairs, I bet somebody would pay up to $500 for that, because restored, you could put that on a guitar that needs that neck, and somebody would totally be willing to pay that much. But this one's on eBay by Big Jim Hookups. Only message him if you're interested. Don't harass the guy. That's not the intent of this video. It is to make sense of the product. He's asking $2,500. He had offered it to me as cheap as $22, but I just decided we'll just talk about that one. Because at the same time, if he updated this to 1972 Gibson neck put on homemade BC Rich Bich body, I think he probably could find somebody who would love this. Because there's guys like Slash who love Les Pauls and love these old BC Rich USA models. There's somebody who would appreciate that out there. But lastly tonight, I want to share another guitar. Now, when we look through these photos together, I want you to think, how would you personally describe this guitar if it was yours to sell? What I'm seeing here is a wine red 25 50th anniversary Les Paul. This is one of the first super large, ultra limited edition ones done in 1978. And you can find some, as late as 1981, believe it or not. But 78, 79, that's your main run. But it was 25 years of the Les Paul model and 50 years of Les Paul, the man himself, in the music business. They wanted to do lots of fun stuff. This one is nearing what I would consider stage 4. It has the right look. It's definitely a little bit crusty. I'm not sure if that's mold on our fretboard or just old finger cheese that needs cleaned off. We definitely have a whole lot of patina built up onto the body. I mean, look at those knobs. And then you've got some finish checking / drying to the wood. We've got lots of picking scratches over here. The gold is nearly entirely worn off of our pickups. Here's another photo of our knobs. Sometimes these scratches are actually just scratches within the gunk on the top and you can clean them away. But this is really looking like one of those guitars where it's not going to take one cleaning session. It's not going to take 2. It's probably going to take like a good 6 of them. But kind of cool that somebody upgraded it to the diamond posi lock strap locks. And I've got to say, the heavily ambered clear coat looks pretty cool with the red finish. In fact, when I first saw this one listed, I was like, oh my goodness, is that another wooden binding super custom? Because it looks very, very similar to that. So I had to do the double take, but no, it is not that. But if you want to check out that guitar, you can check out this episode. But then we get on over to the back. We've got some dings, scratches. Interesting wood grain, though, but a whole lot more rusty screws, so somebody was sweating while playing that. And we rubbed through our clear coat there. And it has a late 70s Gibson hardshell case. Usually you see the chainsaws with these, but occasionally they left the store with that as well. It's at least error correct, but the slightly less desirable case that they could have potentially came with. So based on what I see, I would call that probably somewhere between a 5 or 6 out of 10. How it's so disgusting and decrepit, it's starting to become cool again. So despite its condition, I still think somebody would love to pick this thing up and give it another life. But now brace yourselves for the title. 1979 Gibson Les Paul 25 50th anniversary wine red. Collector grade? Tarback pickups? No. Collector grade for the type of person who loves the stage 4s, definitely, but I think he needs to rethink the marketing on that one, or he's gonna have some problems. But if you're curious what the whole Tarback pickup talk about is, the stock pickups in these are called the Series 7 pickups, and the thing that makes those special is this was the first mass-produced guitar that Gibson did that had that mini toggle switch there. It allowed them to be coil tapped, as they called it back then, even though I do believe they're technically fully splitting at this point, whereas nowadays Gibson actually is tapping again. But when you pull one of these out, it actually is an epoxy coating on the back. So tarback is a nickname. It's not actually an official model name for any of these pickups. However, these are generally referred to as the Series 7 pickups, and tarbacks are the ones that just have a single lead coming out of them. Not a big deal at all, just thought I'd bring it up. They generally have readings around 16k ohms when they're fully functioning. It's very common for these pickups to get dead coils though. So my advice for you, if you want to add this nice wine red one with really cool patina to it to your collection, ask the seller to ohm the pickups, make sure they still work, and definitely get visuals of your truss rod to make sure it's still adjustable, because that thing has definitely seen some smoky bars. The asking bid is a little bit optimistic though. And you know what? We've got a little bit of extra time tonight. Let's do one more. I wanted to highlight this listing because I love the way he did it. So congratulations, Bullseye Guitars. This might just be something new that eBay is doing, but look at this. First photo, we can see the guitar in the case. The second is actually a video that you can select, and what he's doing is he's just showing off the condition. In that 1974 SG video we just recently did, I said, you know, the power of the video versus photos is absolutely insane. Like, you can't capture everything within the 12 to 25 photos that eBay and or Reverb allows you. So I would love to see Reverb bring this out as an option. And before you say, they do, it just shows up at the end and you link a YouTube video, that's all fine and dandy, but not everybody has a YouTube account to upload to. I would love to see something like that because this makes it so easy to see the condition. Then it's just up to people to do that. I would rather see a quick video like this rather than unrealistic beauty shots of the guitar. But the other reason that I wanted to share this one actually comes down to a very rare serial number variation. So at first I just thought, yeah, it's your usual mid-70s, but then he hits it on the light. It's got a leading C. There was a very small period of time in late 74, early 75 when Gibson experimented with leading letter stamped serial numbers like this. It does not mean it was a custom order. It does not mean it went to Canada. It was just a small variation before they moved into the decal serial numbers. And the reason I know that is that's how you identify some of the earliest made Les Paul artisans like we documented on this one before. It also has that leading C. Now that one was more so just an old neck that they were probably reutilizing and putting a different fretboard on. So something to be aware of. And with that, I will leave you guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode, learned something new, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.